Take your hand out of my salt, Caleb, Dora said, pulling the wooden bowl away before his split palm touched the beef. Delbert Macklin stopped counting cattle long enough to laugh, and Caleb, who had advertised for a wife to preserve winter meat, not challenge his creditor, felt his pride go hot. Then Dora weighed a cut, glanced at Macklin's ledger, and asked why every Jasper barrel lost exactly 12 pounds before it reached town. Granville Walker, the narrow-shouldered clerk beside Macklin's scale wagon, looked down too quickly. If Dora was right, the Jasper ranch had not been failing by accident. The evening sun lay low over the South Texas brush, turning the dust gold around the cattle pens. Dora stood at the yard table in a plain gray dress, a brown shawl around her shoulders, both hands deep in beef salt and cracked pepper. Caleb kept close enough to reach the bowl and far enough to pretend he was not watching her. Delbert wore town clothes in cattle country. His boots were too clean, his smile too smooth. He held the Jasper mortgage, owned the freight wagons, and controlled the only bulk salt within 60 miles. "Drying does that, Mrs. Jasper," he said. "Meat loses moisture." "Moisture, yes." Dora turned the cut and pressed salt along the edge. "But 12 pounds exactly from every barrel, no matter the grade. Nature has never been that tidy." One of the ranch hands coughed into his fist. Granville shifted beside the scale weights. Caleb stepped half a pace in front of Dora before he knew he had moved. "We'll settle the tally tomorrow, Delbert. Lights going." Delbert's eyes slid from Caleb to Dora. "Tomorrow, then. Before the blizzard arrives, you'll want my wagons when it does." He tipped his hat and drove away, Granville riding on the rear board of the scale wagon. Only after the wheels faded did Dora look at Caleb's cloth-wrapped hand. "You were going to salt meat with that." "I was not." "You were leaning over the bowl with purpose." "I lean with purpose most places." The corner of her mouth moved. "Wash first. Then you may stand near the salt and look necessary." She wiped her hands on a coarse towel and started toward the house. Caleb stared after her. 3 weeks earlier, he had expected a practical wife, a woman who could run a smokehouse, keep a pantry, and endure an isolated ranch without asking him for much. Instead, he had married a woman who could find theft in a ledger and mock him without raising her voice. "Did you know Macklin was cheating?" the waits she asked without turning. "I knew the numbers were bad." "That was not my question. He owns the road to market." Dora stopped. "A road is not the same thing as the truth." "No," Caleb said, "but the road can still carry your beef away, or leave it here to spoil." She faced him, then steady, rather than frightened. "So we learn which part of his power is real." That answer followed Caleb long after she went inside. The marriage had begun on paper, in a small San Antonio chapel. Dora Ingram had answered his advertisement with a letter containing no flattery and 6 questions about water, cattle, fuel debt, smokehouse capacity, and whether she would be paid from beef sales. Caleb had respected the questions more than he cared to admit. At the chapel, she requested her own share of the preserved meat profits and a voice in provisioning. He agreed, imagining flour, coffee, and lamp oil. He gave her the bedroom at the ranch and took the cot in the adjoining office. In front of the hands, they were Mr. and Mrs. Jasper. Alone, they used Caleb and Dora, carefully, as if first names might promise more than either had signed for. Caleb had survived by becoming useful before anyone could ask. He rose before daylight, repaired gates in the dark, chopped wood, checked the wells, and carried every worry as though sharing it would make him smaller. If no one had to depend on him openly, no one could disappoint him openly either. Dora disturbed that arrangement without appearing to try. On her 4th morning, she moved the cast-iron skillets so she did not have to reach across the stove flame. By the end of the week, She had dragged the butchering table out of the afternoon sun and marked the smokehouse wall with chalk arrows for draft and heat. She did not ask whether the ranch had always done things one way. She asked whether that way worked. At noon the next day, Caleb ate beans alone in the tack room, as he had for years. Dora's voice carried from the yard. "If you cut it that thick, Higgins' smoke will never reach the center. Mr. Jasper says thick cuts hold better on the trail," old Higgins replied. Mr. Jasper once preserved beef so salty it could have shod a mule. Caleb set down his plate. By the time he reached the table, Higgins was studying the sky with the urgent interest of a man seeking somewhere else to be. "That batch kept 6 months," Caleb said. Dora held out her knife. "Taste what remains in the pantry." "I have." "Then your survival is a stronger wonder than this ranch." Higgins barked a laugh and immediately pretended to cough. Caleb cut a thin edge from the piece Dora had trimmed. The thickness was even. The grain was clean. She had done in a week what he had failed to teach 3 hired men in a year. "Too thin for Kansas," he said, because surrendering at once seemed unhealthy. "It is not going to Kansas." She wiped the blade. Stage drivers and freight crews between here and San Antonio need food they can chew before their horses die of old age. Caleb almost smiled. Then she opened the tally book. "Macklin charges you high for salt, charges freight by the barrel, and reports every barrel light at his town scale. He takes his profit 3 times. He is still the only buyer with enough wagons." "Not the only buyer." Dora lowered her voice. "Gwendolyn Gentry manages winter provisions for 2 southern stage lines. She comes through this district in 6 days. Caleb stared. "How do you know I sent a telegraph inquiry before I left San Antonio?" "You studied the beef market before marrying me." "A practical marriage deserves practical preparation." A faint color rose along her neck. Caleb noticed it and wished he had not, because afterward he noticed the loose strand of hair at her cheek, the soot on her cuff, and the way her confidence thinned only when the subject turned from trade to the 2 of them. "Give me 6 days," she said. "Let me prepare a sample lot. If Gwendolyn accepts it, we sell without Macklin." Caleb looked toward the nearby pasture. The breeding cows moved among the dry grass, lean but sound. "Macklin offered to erase half the winter account for 30 breeding head." Dora's face changed. "If you sell those cows, the ranch may last until spring. It will not last beyond it. It buys time. It buys him your future." "I'll handle Macklin." "And what am I to handle?" "The smokehouse." The hurt came and vanished so quickly he might have missed it if he had not begun watching her too closely. "I am not a hired cook, Caleb. I did not say you were. You asked for my work. I asked for a voice. Those are not the same bargain if you silence me whenever the choice matters." He felt cornered by the simple fairness of it. The old answer came first. "I said I'll handle it. Salt the beef." He walked away before she could see how much the words shamed him. For 2 days they worked near each other, with a strained politeness that made the ranch hands unusually quiet. Caleb discovered that Dora did not merely cook. She counted. She saved tallow he had always traded cheaply, rendered it clean, and packed it into small covered buckets worth twice as much in town. She paired lean cuts with richer ones so the smokehouse lost less weight. She made Higgins record every measure twice and then thanked him as though accuracy were a skill rather than obedience. Caleb caught himself listening for her voice when he crossed the yard. When he did not hear it, the place seemed poorly built. On the 3rd afternoon, Dovey Larkin drove in with 2 thin steers tied behind her wagon. She was a widow with a small spread 5 miles east and the tired posture of someone who had been bargaining with winter. Caleb came from the barn, prepared to offer the low price Macklin had forced on everyone. Dora reached the wagon first. "They are light," Dora said after inspecting the steers. "But the bone is good. I can give you $3 a head and a fair share of preserved beef by finished weight." Dovey's shoulders loosened. "Macklin offered $1, said they would die before Christmas. Macklin earns money each time a rancher grows afraid." Dora glanced toward Caleb. "We need not help him." The words could have embarrassed him. Instead, Caleb heard the "we" in them. "Bring them to the south pen," he told Dovey. "Higgins will water them first." Dora looked at him. Nothing in her expression was dramatic, yet the distance between them eased by one careful inch. That evening, Caleb found a weak calf shivering in the barn. The norther was near. He could smell iron in the wind. He knelt in the straw, let the calf suck milk from his fingers, and spoke to it in a low voice he did not use with people. A skirt rustled behind him. Dora stood inside the stall with a clean rag and a jar of salve. "Higgins says your hand opened again." "Higgins talks too much." "He says the same of me." That almost saved him. Then she knelt and reached for his hand. Caleb let her take it. Her fingers were warm and firm. When the cloth touched the raw split in his palm, pain ran up his arm. But it was not the sting that frightened him. It was the care. There was no bargain in it, no audience, no debt he could repay before morning. He pulled away and stood too fast. "I said it is fine." Dora remained kneeling. Hurt sharpened her face, but she did not apologize for trying. "You will let a calf lean on you," she said, "but not a person." "The calf has no choice." "Neither do I some days." We signed the same paper. She set the salve beside the bucket and left. Caleb stayed in the stall after the calf had finished drinking. The jar sat where she had placed it, small and accusing in the lantern light. The temperature fell after midnight. A crack like a rifle shot brought Caleb off his cot. The main support in the smokehouse had split. Heat from the fires and the sudden cold had twisted the old timber. One rack sagged over the coals, 3 days of Dora's work hanging above ruin. Caleb did not wake her. He hauled in a cedar post and his tools. Smoke burned his eyes as he braced the rack, cut the post, and lifted the crosspiece into place. Then he saw Dora's chalk lines. Arrows marked the air path. Numbers marked the proper height between racks. His first impulse was to rebuild it the way he always had. He even set the beam at his old measure. Then he moved it. He followed every mark she had drawn. For 3 hours he measured, fitted, and hammered until the racks stood level. He added a narrow stool near the fire door, sanded its edges, and set the latch lower so Dora could reach it without stretching over the heat. It was the first work he had ever done on the ranch that announced, plainly, that another person's way belonged there. At dawn, Dora crossed the frosted yard and stopped at the open smokehouse. Caleb came out black with soot, his shirt damp under his coat. She looked past him at the cedar post, the even racks, and the stool. "You followed my drawing." "Seemed a poor use of chalk otherwise." Her gaze went to his hand. Fresh blood showed through the cloth. She said nothing about it. She brought him a clean towel, then took a strip of finished beef from her apron. "Taste." The cure was balanced, the smoke deep, the meat tender without being soft. It was better than anything Caleb had put his name on. "It will hold," he said. Dora's smile came slowly, and then, all at once, in the pale morning it made the cold yard feel altered. "It will win the contract." He wanted to tell her he believed that, because she had made it. He wanted, more dangerously, to tell her that he had rebuilt the smokehouse so she would still be there to use it next winter. Instead, he said, "Do not let Higgins hear me praise it. He will grow lazy. Higgins already believes I am the only mind on the place. Then we must reduce his coffee." Her laugh was brief and warm. Caleb carried the sound with him until a rider arrived from town. Gwendolyn Gentry was earlier than expected. She would reach the Jasper ranch the next afternoon. Caleb folded the telegram. "I'll meet her in the yard. I'll show the samples and the tally." Dora stopped packing a barrel. "You will present it?" "I own the deed. I designed the cure. She will expect to speak with the ranch owner. She will expect to speak with the person who can answer her questions." Caleb heard the truth and resisted it anyway. If Macklin learns what we are doing, he may pull his wagons before she arrives. Let me stand in front. "Stand beside me. This is not the time." "It is exactly the time." Dora came around the table. "You say you are protecting the ranch, but you mean you are protecting the part of yourself that must be the only necessary person here." His jaw tightened. She pointed toward the barn. "You let that calf need you because it cannot leave. You rebuilt my smokehouse because timber cannot reject you. But a person can care for you and still remain free. That is what you cannot bear." The wind moved through the mesquite. Caleb felt every old instinct rise. Leave work, shut the door, make himself useful somewhere. No one could touch the reason. He looked at Dora. She was angry, but she had not walked away. If he turned from her now, he would choose the same loneliness he had claimed was strength. The jar of salve still sat on the fence rail where he had placed it that morning. Caleb picked it up, sat on an overturned bucket, and held out his injured hand. No apology came easily enough to say. He offered what he had. Dora's breath trembled. She stepped close and unwrapped the dirty cloth. This time, he did not pull away. He watched her clean the wound, watched her anger soften without disappearing. "Beside you," he said at last. She tied the fresh bandage. "Beside me." By noon, Delbert Macklin's buggy came hard into the yard. He carried a leather satchel and the confidence of a man accustomed to arriving before anyone else's courage. "Heard Gwendolyn Gentry is coming," he called. "Heard your wife believes she owns a freight concern now." Caleb stood on the porch. Dora stood at his right, not behind him. "It is a free market, Delbert." "Not for a man owing me salt freight and a mortgage." Delbert drew out a folded paper. "I can call the seasonal account today and refuse every wagon under my name. Or you sign over 30 breeding cows. Do that, and I will forgive half the account." His smile turned toward Dora. "I will even let Caleb take credit for the new cure. Folks trust a rancher more than a kitchen woman." Caleb's hand dropped near his Colt before he could stop it. Delbert noticed. For one hot second, Caleb wanted the clean simplicity of a drawn line and a frightened man. Then Dora's bandage tightened around his palm. He stepped down from the porch, putting his body between Delbert and the table without blocking Dora's view. "You will speak to my wife with respect on my land." Delbert's smile thinned. "Or what? Or the next thing you hear will be me asking you to leave only once." The yard went still. Caleb did not draw. His anger was real enough without a pistol in his hand. Then he turned to Dora. "What do you want to do?" Delbert laughed. "You are asking her." Caleb kept his eyes on his wife. "If we sign," Dora said, "we keep the ranch for a season and lose it by degrees. If we refuse, we lose his wagons today. I can drive one. We need 4. Caleb looked toward the eastern road. "Dovey has one. The Miller brothers have 2. They will risk Macklin's trade. Then we tell them the truth and let them choose. Dora's expression changed. He had not taken command from her. He had joined her decision. She faced Delbert. We are not signing. Our account is not due until spring, and you know it. Take your paper and leave. Delbert's face darkened. You will not buy a grain of salt or turn a wheel through my yard by sundown. We have enough salt, Dora said. That surprised Caleb. She glanced at him. I used less because I know what I am doing. Even then, with ruin leaning over them, he nearly laughed. Delbert climbed into his buggy. By tomorrow evening, that beef will still be sitting here. When the dust settled, Dora opened the storehouse. She had saved nearly a third of the salt by changing the cure. There was enough for the second lot, but no margin for waste. Caleb saddled his horse. I will bring the wagons. Ask them, Dora said. Do not promise for them. He looked back at her. Beside you. Beside me, she answered. He rode first to Dovey Larkin. She listened from beside her wagon while he explained the stage contract and Dora's terms. Every rancher's beef would remain under the rancher's own name. Every load would be weighed before it left Jasper land. Dovey did not reach for the harness. If Gwendolyn refuses that meat, she said, Macklin will close his scale yard to me. He may refuse me salt come spring. I have 12 head left, Caleb. 12. I know. You are asking me to wager every one of them on a woman I met 3 days ago. No, Caleb said. I am asking whether you would rather lose 12 pounds at a time for the rest of your life. Dovey looked toward her thin pasture. Caleb did not press her. Dora will not promise what she cannot deliver. Neither will I. If you come, the risk is yours. So is the true weight. Dovey stood silent for a long moment. Then she took the harness from its peg. The first time Macklin weighed my beef, she said I thought I was a poor cattle woman. The second time, I thought I was unlucky. I would like to learn what I am, with an honest scale. At the Miller place, the older brother was less willing. Macklin owns the freight shed, Amos Miller said. He owns the salt store and the men who unload at the depot. If we cross him and fail, no one south of here will haul for us. His younger brother Eli stared at the ground. Fear had already made the choice for him. Caleb understood it. A month earlier, he would have called that caution. And if you do not cross him, Caleb asked. Amos frowned. He takes your cattle cheap this winter, your breeding stock next winter, and the deed after that. Waiting politely outside a locked gate will not open it. Eli looked up first. Mrs. Jasper truly puts our name on the load, burned into the tally board if you wish, and our weight, measured where you can see it. Amos swore softly and looked toward their 2 wagons. If this fails, he said, Macklin will see all 3 of us ruined. Caleb shook his head. He has already seen that. Dora is the first person to offer him a different sight. The brothers exchanged a glance. By dusk, both Miller wagons were rolling toward Jasper's land behind Caleb's horse. The blizzard struck after midnight, hard enough to rattle the roof boards. Fires had to be watched, barrels sealed, teams sheltered, and loads balanced before the yard froze solid. Dora directed the work from the smokehouse. Caleb moved where she sent him. At 2 a.m, he found himself swaying beside the first wagon, tally book in hand. Go to sleep, Dora said. I must check the hitches. Higgins checked them. The rear axle. Dovey greased it. The fire. I am standing beside the fire. She took the ledger from his fingers. Caleb looked down at her hand on the book. No one had ever held the Jasper accounts but him. He let go. "You must be upright when Gwendolyn arrives," Dora said. "I am upright now." "You are leaning on a wagon that is not leaning back." He went to the office cot. 2 hours later, he woke in the alarm and reached for his boots. Only the right one remained. Dora entered with coffee. "Where is my other boot?" "In the flour bin." "Why?" "You cannot supervise anyone with one bare foot." Caleb sat back, stared at her, and laughed. It came out rusty, then fuller. Dora smiled over the cup. In that small, ridiculous moment, he understood that love had not arrived like lightning. It had accumulated in altered shelves, honest weights, chalk lines, bandages, and one stolen boot. The ranch no longer felt invaded by her presence. It felt wrong whenever she left a room. He took the coffee. "You realize flour is dear. So is sleep. I may deduct the boot from your wages. You may try." He wanted to say it then. The words rose and frightened him. Gwendolyn was coming. The ranch might fail before supper. Dora might receive an offer that carried her back to the life she had left. So Caleb did the harder thing. He did not bind her with a confession made during crisis. He drank the coffee and prepared to stand beside her choice. At noon, the stagecoach rolled into the Jasper yard. Gwendolyn Gentry descended in a dark traveling suit, practical boots visible beneath the hem. She surveyed the 4 wagons, the sealed barrels, the ranch names chalked on each tally board, and Dora standing at the first load with the ledger. Caleb stood beside her. Delbert Macklin arrived on horseback moments later, certain he had come to witness failure. Gwendolyn's inspector opened the first barrel, cut through a slab, checked the cure line, and tasted a narrow piece. He inspected 2 more barrels, chosen at random. Gwendolyn took the next sliver herself. It parted cleanly between her fingers, releasing the warm scent of mesquite smoke into the cold air before she tasted it. "Even smoke," the inspector said. "Good salt, low waste." Gwendolyn looked at Caleb. "Mr. Jasper, this is far better than the trail beef I have known from your ranch." "It should be," Caleb said. "I did not make it." He took the old tally board from the wagon. Jasper had been burned into the wood years earlier. Dora Ingram designed the cure, reordered the work, brought in the Larkin and Miller cattle, and arranged these loads. I hired no kitchen help. I married a partner, and then behaved too slowly to understand it. Dora's fingers tightened around the ledger. Caleb turned to the gathered ranchers. His throat felt raw, though the smoke was long gone. "I placed an advertisement for a wife, because I thought I needed someone to salt the winter beef. Truth is, I wanted another person here, and was too proud to name the wanting. If you buy this meat, Miss Gentry, you deal with Dora. Her figures, her process, her word." Delbert rode forward. "This ranch is in default. No stage line should contract with a debtor who has broken its freight agreement." Gwendolyn looked from him to Caleb. "Is the note due?" "Not until spring," Caleb said. "The salt account is disputed because his scales have been taking 12 pounds from every barrel." "Disputed by a wife's arithmetic," Delbert snapped. "By mine too," said Granville Walker. The scale clerk stepped from behind Dovey's wagon, carrying a burlap sack. He dropped it in the dirt. Iron weights clanked inside. "I weighed them against the depot standard this morning," Granville said. "Mr. Macklin's barrel set is hollowed. 12 pounds light. He made me use it for 3 years. Delbert's face emptied of color. Granville looked at Dora. Mrs. Jasper asked the first question anyone had asked in a long while. I thought I ought to answer it. Dovey moved to stand beside him. The Miller brothers followed. No one touched Delbert, but the space around his horse narrowed with public contempt.
"You cannot prove theft in a cattle yard," Delbert said.
"I do not need to try a case today," Gwendolyn replied. "I need suppliers whose measures I can trust. Mr. Macklin, none of my southern lines will use your scales or wagons again." It was not a court judgment. It was worse for him, a market turning its back. Dora closed the ledger. "You were right about one thing, Mr. Macklin," she said. "A road can carry a man's fortune away." Delbert stared at her. "You mistook owning that road for owning everyone forced to travel it. You own neither now." Amos Miller stepped beside his brother. Dovey lifted her chin. Granville did not move away from the false weights. Delbert wheeled his horse toward the road. Caleb let him go. Winning no longer required making another man afraid. Gwendolyn faced Dora. "The beef is excellent. The organization is better. I can offer you a post in San Antonio, overseeing provisions for the southern routes. The salary is twice what this ranch earned last year." The yard seemed to lose all sound. Caleb had known such an offer might come. Knowing did not prepare him for the clean pain of it. For one terrible instant, he saw the bedroom without Dora's shawl on its peg, the skillet returned to the wrong hook, and the smokehouse stool sitting unused beneath her chalk marks. He imagined carrying her trunk to Gwendolyn's coach with his own hands, checking the straps twice, and standing in the road until the wheels disappeared. His chest tightened so sharply that drawing breath felt like lifting the broken smokehouse beam again. Dora deserved recognition money, and work no man could dismiss as kitchen labor. If she chose San Antonio, he would help load her trunk. He would give her every dollar owed from the beef, and never make her gratitude into a chain. He would not speak his love at the one moment it might sound like a debt she had to repay. He looked at her and made himself remain still. Gwendolyn waited. Dora looked at the wagons bearing 3 ranch names. Then she looked at the smokehouse, the repaired cedar post visible through the open door. Her hand shifted on the ledger. Caleb's bandaged hand tightened against the seam of his trousers. He made it go still. She was measuring the offer, and he loved her enough to understand that she should. At last, she turned to him. He could not read her face, but he let her see everything in his. "I thank you," Dora said to Gwendolyn, "but I do not want to oversee another person's line." She crossed the yard and took Caleb's bandaged hand. "I want to build one here." Caleb's breath left him. Relief came so hard it nearly bent him, but he did not close his fingers around hers until she did first. Dora lifted the old tally board. "We will accept the contract on 3 conditions. Each ranch keeps its name on its beef. Every load is weighed twice. And this board changes today." "With what heading?" Gwendolyn asked. Dora looked at Caleb. "Jasper Ingram," he said. "Jasper Ingram," she agreed. "A curing house and freight concern for every ranch that brings honest weight." Gwendolyn considered her, then held out her hand. "Done." Dora shook it. She had won her own contract, named her own terms, and chosen where to build. Caleb had done nothing for her that she could not have done herself. He had only stopped standing in her way. The ranchers cheered. Higgins declared that he had always favored thinner cuts, which caused Dovey to threaten him with a barrel lid. Under the noise, Dora kept hold of Caleb's hand. "I did not stay because you needed me," she said softly. "I know. I stayed because you finally let me choose you." Caleb looked down at the woman who had challenged his weights, his habits, and every lonely rule he mistook for character. "I love you," he said. The words were rough, but they did not break him. Not for saving the ranch, not for staying. I love you because when you stand at my table, I want there to be room for you in every decision I make. Dora's eyes shone. I love you too, she said, though I reserve judgment on your old beef. That is cruel. It was nearly building material. He bent his head, giving her time to refuse. Dora rose on her toes and kissed him once warm and certain, while the wind snapped the tally sheets against the wagon boards. By spring, the stage contract had paid the honest balance on the ranch note. By the next winter, Jasper Ingram operated 6 wagons and a smokehouse 3 times the size of the first. Dovey managed incoming stock. Granville kept the public scales tested each week against the depot standard. The Millers ran freight south. The Jasper herd grew, but Dora refused to build prosperity by swallowing smaller spreads. Instead, neighbors brought cattle under their own names and shared the stronger price. Within 3 seasons, the Jasper Ingram outfit had become the largest independent beef supplier in that part of Texas. Not because one ranch owned everything, but because no single man owned the road anymore. At dawn on the first salting day of the 4th winter, Dora stood at the long yard table with the familiar wooden bowl between her hands. The sky brightened over the cattle pens. Smoke drifted from the new curing house. Caleb brought her coffee and set it beyond the reach of the salt. He did not take the knife. He did not adjust the cut. He placed both hands on the table and waited until she looked up. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Dora slid a piece of beef toward him, making room at her side. "Wash your hands first." Caleb laughed, carried the bowl to the pump with her, and came back beside her. The ranch had become strong the day he stopped mistaking loneliness for strength.